Hello and good morning. What's up, everyone? This is EJK here, and today is going to be a special video from my ordinary Terran videos because we are going to be taking a look at a protoss player Trap versus Polt from MLG Red Bull. No, not MLG. It's Red Bull Battlegrounds Washington. Yeah, that's the tournament. And even though Trap loses a series 1-3, the game that he or 1-2, he only takes one game off of Polt. But we're going to be taking a look at the game in which he does win against Polt because uh, he does some very special building placement, and I think that's a direct result of him getting a substantial lead and being able to kind of close out the game in a relatively easy fashion from there. So we're going to take a look at that right now. Nope, here it is. This is it. Alright, so now the difference is, well, not the difference. I guess we're still going to be taking a look at what Polt does so we can understand how Trap's building placement is able to kind of provide a soft counter built in without actually changing anything in your build besides where you build your buildings, to be able to stop Polt's kind of silly, I guess not silly, but unorthodox timing attack that we see from him with Stim and a bunch of Hellions. Right away, Trap is building his first pylon over here, and that's going to be designed to provide a wall off over here. It's very important as a Protoss player, I think, to have a good SimCity, because not only does that make it harder for drops to do a lot of damage, like if you have good SimCity, your Hellion drops as a Terran player is going to have a much harder time skirting around the edges. Like when the Cyber Core goes there, the Hellions will only be able to go in this area. Like they won't be able to go in a full circle. So it's really important to have a dead end so that when those Hellions reach that dead end, then they're going to be able to be taken care of with, instead of having the probes like running around and losing a couple probes for every extra volley that the Hellions are able to get off. Not only drops, but Reapers are also very prone to good building placement. And what I mean by that is, if you have a Reaper and you're going to scout, let's say you get in here and then you reach over here and there's a dead end, your Reaper is pretty much just going to die, because if it tries to go through the probe line, then, well, you're shit out of luck, because the probes are going to tickle you to death. But if you try to go backwards, then the stalker that was chasing you, because you were going this way, the stalker is going to be going this way, then you're going to run right into the stalker and you're going to end up dying. I guess it's not full wall off here, but it is a wall off over here. I am like 99% sure that is a wall off. And that's all that really matters. Like, it doesn't matter if it's here or if it's here. You just need some sort of wall off so that you can make a dead end so that units just can't run freely around your base. Taking a look at the game progressing, just a quick check on the Terran player. Polt is going for a very standard Reaper expand. He's scouted with his SCV on one spot because it is a 4-player map. He doesn't need to send his SCV to the natural over here because the Reaper is well on its way. Polt only has one SCV and gas at the time to build that second barracks. Also note that his second barracks was after his second depot as well, so he isn't rushing out to do a very fast concussive or combat shield or stim timing. Otherwise, he would have added the second racks a bit faster to get. It would make about 15 to 20 second difference by adding the second barracks before the depot, but it's a bit more all in because you have to cut workers a little bit. We see here Trap is progressing normally. He has taken his own expansion, and Polt has not shown his, well, okay, he's shown his Reaper. It popped in and went and saw this. And as a Terran player, if you see this, like, that means you can't, like, if you scout over here, then the Reaper's gonna die. So actually, you know, instead of explaining it, why don't we just watch the Reaper? Polt doesn't want to lose the Reaper. Sometimes the Protoss player will wait. 5:15 is usually the golden timing, but sometimes Protoss players wait to throw down their tech buildings. So if you send in your Reaper too early, you might not be able to see anything. So that's why Polt chooses instead to scout for proxy locations. And although there is only one stalker and one mothership core, and a second stalker is well on the way, Trap decided to get that robo facility before his second stalker. That's why his robo facility was so early. But Polt does not know that. There's no way he can know that, so he is just playing safe and scouting around the map for different proxies everywhere. He should really queue it up over here and over here too, because I mean, it's not really hard for a protoss player to build something right there as well, you know. Taking a look at Polt's build, we see that he is getting stim, and he set himself up for Oracle defense, and he's also making Hellions, so he has 2 barracks and 1 factory. So, oh, I really hate these icons. But, more icons. So if we just take a quick check at Polt's build, he hasn't taken a second gas yet. He hasn't started any upgrades, so he's going to be going for a pretty substantially large 2-base attack when stim finishes. And I really like how you can barely see. Okay, there we go. There's a little tab, but then it gets hidden like that. It's so weird. So he's going to be going for mostly Marine Hellion attack. The reason why he doesn't build Marauders is because they're pretty expensive. I guess he could add them in, but I'd have to take a quicker or a more detailed look into Polt's build, and if he does add Marauders, he might not be able to continue SCV production continuously. It's just Marauders are pretty expensive, so Polt is going for the Marine heavy composition, which is fine. You just got to be careful to try to hit before this first Colossi is out. And as we see from Trap here, he is getting a really fast robotics bay. He hasn't scouted his opponent. He sent the probe here to scout. He didn't see it, so he knows Polt. Well, no, he did scout. Duh. His second scout is coming with the observer, and he did see the Reaper, so he knows that Polt is going for a Reaper expand as well. So we see this first observer popping out at about 7:25. It's going to hit Polt's main base, and it's important not to keep your observer here because it can get easily sniped off just like that. If you're a Terran player, a good timing to note is that at about 7:30 to 8 minutes, depending on the map, like it'll be closer to 8 minutes on cross positions Deadwing, but on very close air positions like merry-go-round, the observer will get here a little bit faster than 7:30 like we saw. And if we just take a look at what Polt does here, he knows that this is the timing that when observers will first kind of like check out your base, so he will be actively scouting like the edges over here to see that observer, and so like he's looking all around for it right now. He sees it, and he of course has scan energy saved up, 44 and 62. See, he saved it up on purpose for that observer and or DTs because he hasn't scouted what his opponent is doing yet either. But he does see the observer, and he's able to pick it off because he knows that this is the timing that the observer hits. So it's very important for the Protoss player to try to get in, get out as fast as possible without losing the observer, because losing it is a pretty big deal. But Trap was able to see at least one tech lab, and he sees a factory as well. So this could either mean that it's... So Trap is probably thinking right now that it was a +1 build, where you get the faster engineering bay, and then you also get, or just a fast 2-racks build because he sees the factory. It implies a starport, not Hellions. Although he could have seen the factory building units and being active, so he could think it's some sort of 2 barracks, 1 factory attack. I'm not quite sure how popular that is on the ladder, but it'll all come down to how popular it is, really. And we see here Trap's building placement. It's not really... There's not really a lot of buildings, but I'm just going to go over a quick synopsis of everything. So his 3 pylons are... His first 3 pylons were placed over here. The reason why he doesn't place it over here or over here right away is because he knows that they're just going to be picked off. Like, if you have a pylon over here and someone drops you, that pylon's most likely going to die, and then your army's going to get here, and then the medevacs are going to run away. So you're going to lose that pylon for free. So instead of losing the pylon and like making it provide vision over here, he's just going to be more aware of what possibilities the Terran player can do with his army. So we're going to probably see later in the game Actually, no, because of how this game plays out. But normally, and I saw Parting do this versus Innovation on Deadwing as well in the GSL code as round of 8, I believe. It was on Deadwing. Parting, he went for a Blink Stalker opening, and he ended up not having any pylons over here as well. And Innovation ends up dropping him in the dead airspace. He gets all of his units unloaded, but because Parting's army was well positioned, the drop wasn't able to do anything, and it was deflected. So really, it's all keeping these pylons here means that you aren't going to lose them to any early medevac drops with stim at that 10:30 timing. The next important thing to look at is the two buildings over here. The tech buildings are very, very important. You don't want them to, you don't obviously don't want to have like a robotics bay over here because that can easily be sniped. You want all of your buildings kind of clustered in the hardest area that you can, that the Terran player can possibly drop. So it would be about this because of how merry-go-round is shaped. It's like a dead end. Like if the Terran player drops over here and you have tech building here, he can snipe it off, yeah, but there's a higher chance that he's going to be able to, he's going to lose the medevac because there is no retreat path for the medevacs to take after they get in there. It's dead, it's a suicide mission basically. So keeping his buildings behind like where this wall is, and it really makes it hard. Like the earliest polt can drop is over here and it can get scouted. And then even then there's this little wall off, so he can't just run his units over here and kill it. He has to drop over here, and that just gives Trap way too much time to react and to finish off Polt's army and make it so that the trade is in fact in Trap's favor. And the last part to look at is the building placement over here by Trap. So it's 7:30 right now, and so far Trap has scouted that there are at least 2 barracks on the map. So normally against 3 racks timing attacks, it could be concussive shell, it could be combat shield, it could even be stim timing attacks like with the 2 tech labs. Having the building placement like this means that you aren't going to be able to, and I'm just going to do that. So we see that it's a complete wall off over here, so that if, let's say, the Terran player walks up over here with a bunch of army and he is over here and we pause the game, the Terran player has a couple options. If the building placement was not here, then he'd just be able to go over here and start picking off some probes at the gas and kind of like force the probes to run in this direction. But if their buildings are here, then the Terran player only has one option to go, and that is to go this way. And the Protoss player's army is always going to be over here. So it's going to have to be to directly engage the Protoss army rather than being able to pick off probes and then engage the Protoss army and lose some mining time. So that's what this building placement accomplishes. It's just a dead end so that if Polt tries to focus it down under photon overcharge, he's like killing a couple gateways or a couple pylons is obviously not going to be worth it for the amount of bio he loses. If he tries to target the army down, he's not going to be taking that good of a trade because ultimately you want the probes. If we take a look here, it's 41 probes to 34 SCVs. The income is in a decent shape. It's good for Polt because he has a mule. He did spend 1 scan energy to kill that observer. So the economy is pretty alright, but because of how many units you invest, you have to slow down the Protoss economy over resetting his army count or dealing damage to the structures. It's always a priority for the Terran player to try to kill probes. So that's what this building placement accomplishes here. And it's gonna be very important to take a look at what, oh, and it also, that Reaper also couldn't escape. Let me just go back really quickly. So it was kind of like what I was talking about earlier on in the game. If the Reaper scouted up here, it wouldn't be able to escape. Well, the same thing applies because there was a little dead end area. So the Reaper comes in over here. It's obviously going to get sacrificed because Polt has it queued up to go over here. But it's just in case, like in case Polt wanted to try to keep that Reaper alive, having that having this little wall off over here means that the Reaper, there's no way for the Reaper to just go back around like that. If, like, let's say the 2 stalkers were out of position. So really there's only one way the Reaper can go, and it's either going this way, and it's going to run into some more protoss units because they're usually clustered over here, or to go into the main and end up dying. So it can't trap. Having this building placement cancels out the Reaper's ability to retreat, is all I'm trying to say. And Polt isn't able to scout what's going on, but since he saw the observer there, he knows that there could be a possibility of or no, it's most likely going to be Colossus play. There could be oracles. That's why Polt had his 6 Marines over there, like a robo and then a starport. It is possible, or DTs. But since it could have been DTs actually, but he is saving a scan. He's at 69 energy, so he does have a scan saved up for the DTs, and he does have an engineering bay. So this attack is now progressing, and these two structures I don't quite like as much by Trap, the building placement, because it's a lot easier to pick these two buildings off. The advantages it provides by being over here, though, is that Polt's army will have to be over here and go here. And since this is, if we take a look at the positions, Trap has the favorable position because his natural is directly in line with Polt's main base. So he has the close air positions. Polt would have had good better positions on this map if Trap spawned in the 6 o'clock and Polt had access to the main base. Then if these structures were placed over here, like over here, and Trap had spawned here, then it would have been a big problem. But I guess it's not as big of a problem in these positions to have these buildings placed over here, because Polt's army would have to be extremely out of position to be able to snipe those tech structures off. So as we see here, Trap has this well-placed observer to spot for this funky-looking attack. Only one Marauder, almost 16 Marines. Okay, 2 Marauders. More than 16 Marines. A little couple things to note right here. There are a lot of Marines, and that is 1 Colossus without range. The only things that can hit that Colossus that have equal range are 2 Marauders, and that's not really a lot. And the Colossus can do life-threatening damage to those Marines because those Marines do not have combat shields, in fact. So we see this going here, battle, Colossus doesn't even die. Polt kind of is like, okay, so this didn't work at all. What am I supposed to do with my units? He tries to go over here, and he tries to run around to snipe the probes because the probes were going in this direction, but Trap's building placement is able to make those Marines go directly the other way. So this was a pretty bad attack by Polt. He lost a lot of units. He lost his entire army, and Trap is also ahead. He didn't lose that Colossus either. That Colossus paid for itself in dividends. The one thing I just want to say about Polt's attack that could have been done better is that, well, I'm not actually sure if it could have done better. Okay, he does move out before Stim, so never mind. Never mind about what I was saying. So this is, he is able to like have his army here exactly when Stim is done, and this is a Stim timing attack too. But when there's 1 Colossus out, it makes things extremely hard to make these attacks work, because the Colossus is just such a DPS dealer, and it's so hard to focus down as well, because it can just go so easily between these buildings, and the Protoss would have to chase, or the Terran would have to chase, and he'd start to like clump up his units, which you don't want. So like, it's easy to pick off a Colossus over here, but over here it becomes a lot harder, especially under photon overcharge. So Polt's Stim finishes at 850. The Colossus is about to pop out for the first attack. And one thing to note with Trap's build is that his build is kind of an anti-Stim timing attack, because he gets that Colossus out really, really fast. He got that robotics bay, if you remember, before the 2 extra gateways, before the Forge and the Twilight Council. So this Colossus is about the fastest possible timing that can hit. Now, one way that Polt could have made his attack hit a little bit faster when the Colossus was maybe 20 seconds earlier is by adding that second barracks and starting Stim, or adding that second barracks and then adding that depot and then starting Stim. He would have been able to save himself. Let me just go back. I'm at 856. So just to emphasize the point, since this is a stim timing attack, I think it is important to try to make the stim timing hit as fast as possible, because if you can make it hit before that Colossus is out. Oh, okay. So right now, this is how you should do it. You don't want to be building SCVs because you're going to be delaying your depot. So your barracks would go down at 150 minerals and at 17 supply. So it would go down right now at 342 before that depot as well. And since you're delaying the depot, that's why you don't want to build SCVs, because then you'll just get supply blocked. So it could have gone down at 342 if you built it a little bit faster. Of course, you have to cut SCVs a little bit, so it's going to be a bit more aggressive. And Pulse Barracks is able to go down at 403, but it's after this depot, and it's about 20 seconds later than it could have been. And since it depends on if you're doing a timing attack or if you're playing more of an economic build, and since this was a timing attack with 4 Hellions, it was designed to be aggressive. And if we see that Polt doesn't miss, if you don't miss anything else, you put your tech lab down immediately. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh god. 5 seconds right there that his attack could have hit earlier as well. And then if we see Stim isn't. I guess the gas is a little bit off, but Stim also was significantly delayed by about an additional 10 seconds because of, I guess, the kind of lack of execution of the build. This is where Pult's mechanics don't really shine through, is he's lost about half a minute where the stim timing could have attacked faster. And even if he did add the barracks after the depot, just the fact that he was about 14 gas short, and he couldn't start his stim right away, means the difference between attacking when that Colossus is out and when attacking when that Colossus is halfway done. So Polt stim would be done, let's say 15 seconds is when it could have hit faster. So he moves his army out on time, which is great. So if he moved his army out on time, stim would have been done now, and let's say his army was over here at about the 8:30 minute mark. All that Trap has is 1 sentry and 4 stalkers. He has 3 warp gates, and his Colossus is halfway done, and he has a photon overcharge. So if Polt was able to hit at this timing, things would have looked a lot scarier for him. But because he was delayed, because of the inefficiency of his build, this attack is going to go a lot worse for him. But it still has the potential to do damage because this is, it still is a very good timing to hit. Polt just didn't hit it as well as he could have. So now going into the battle, just if you keep a look at these buildings right here, so Polt first stims forward and he splits his army up because you can't funnel your units into that Colossus. You're just going to die, especially with those Marines. So he goes in, Trap very smartly goes up to the ramp so that not only grants him high ground so that Polt can't see, it also gives him the ability, and Polt is scanning over here as well to check if there's any units over there, just to make sure he knows what he's dealing with. But Trap is very smartly going to the high ground, as we see here, and that leaves Polt with a couple options. So when he goes to the high ground and Polt no longer has vision, he can no longer snipe that Colossus, it would be suicide to try to go up that ramp as well. Oh, and it's very smart play by Trap to use a Guardian Shield instead of using a Force Field. I really like this play by him. So not only does he not, he could simply make a Force Field over here to avoid the Terran player from going up to the ramp, but he decides to throw down a Guardian Shield instead. And instead uses his Stalkers to put them in a safer position and to keep them at his ramp so that Polt, there's no way that Polt can go up this ramp right now. So that's really, really smart play by Trap right there. I see a lot of, whenever I do timing attacks, I see a lot of Protoss players throw down Force Fields and then they have their army over here, and it still ends up kind of getting picked off. This is the best possible way to handle this kind of an attack. But of course some timing pushes can hit before that Sentry does have 75 energy, so you are only left with the option of throwing down that Force Field. So now that Trap's army is safe and the Photon Overcharge is going off, there's a bunch of buildings here that we don't care about right now. Polt has 2 options left. He can either retreat now and say, I've done enough damage, and I'm happy with what I've done. He's killed he's killed almost nothing, by the way. Or I can try to go for some probes and sacrifice this army for these probes so that if I can get enough probes, then my army, even if I sacrifice it, Trap won't be able to do a counterattack because he won't have the economy to back it up. And Polt will just be able to kind of like out economy Trap that way. So Polt chooses to go for the hits the mothership port. That's good. He could have thrown down Time Warp. I get that wouldn't have hurt. But Polt decides to go for the probes. And the first thing that Trap does, which I love, is he warps in 3 Zealots over here. So, like, this is kind of, I think the action speaks for itself. Like, the Hellions just aren't able to get any probes. He kills 3 probes, 4 probes, okay. He kills 4 probes with those Hellions. And Polt did have a significant enough number of Hellions to be able to, like, really deal a lot of damage to those probes, and they were stacking up as well. He has 4 Hellions. I believe the Hellions are specifically to kill probes because it does take 14, 40, 14, 28, 38, 42. Oh, I guess it only takes... Okay, so I guess it only takes 3 Hellions. 14, 28, 38, 42. Yeah, it only takes 3 Hellions to one-shot probes. So having 4 Hellions means that there's a lot of potential to do damage here against the probe line. So even if the stim timing attack doesn't work out, the beauty in Polt's build is that he still has 4 Hellions left over to do significant damage to the Protoss player. And we see here, he's targeting the probes. There's a potential for 3 to be lost right here. And he ends up losing... Because of this warp-in, he isn't able to... He's only able to target a couple more before Trap is able to pull them away at the last possible second to deny mining time. So these Hellions, they then try to go in, and he might get one more shot off if he targeted it. He could have gotten maybe that probe, maybe not because the shields look like they were regenerating already. So those 3 Zealots there really prevented Trap from losing any units. And another thing to note is that, so Polt is going here. He's going to try to kill the probes with his Hellions. The Zealot warp-in stops this. So the next thing Polt instinctively does with this army, because he can't go here, the Hellions are already going here, so this is going to flush the probes towards this direction. Polt is going to now try to go with his Bioforce over here to try to catch the probes, because the probes are going to be over here. Very, very good positional play by Polt here. But what does he run into? See, he clicks over here, and then he pretty much runs into all these gateways, and there's nothing he can do. So, like, this is a full wall, so the units cannot slip by. So now Polt, all that he can do is retreat, and he's going to be retreating into this Colossus fire. He chooses not to retreat. Well, he chooses to try to pick off that Colossus. Not a very wise decision, with those Marines being very weak from the stim. I believe since they stimmed, the Colossus can one-shot them, or maybe almost one-shot them. Yeah, they can, because the Marines have 0 armor. So Polt ends up escaping with 4 Marauders, 2 Marines, and he only kills a total of 4 probes. And maybe like a Stalker, or 2. Like, Trap really didn't lose anything in that fight. So, the main reasons that Trap was able to win, just a little quick review, is building placement, Zealot placement, and having his army on the ramp. Those are the 3 main things that allowed Trap to handle this attack so very, very well. And now, afterwards, Trap knows that that was a very big investment by Polt. It delays his starport, it delays his upgrades. He hasn't even started 1-1 yet. And most importantly, Polt lost a significant portion of his army, whereas Trap did not. So Trap is now very smartly going for that counterattack option. Even if not to end the game, he knows that this timing is guaranteed to do damage, just because of what just happened a minute earlier. So killing 2 Marines right there, that's pretty good. But Polt, he does have the 3 racks production, and it would be kind of unwise to overcommit right now, because these Colossus, I believe, do not have extended thermal range. They do have extended thermal range, just kidding. So, since they do have extended thermal range, Trap is Trap can kind of sit here a little bit, but he has to be careful because if Polt does pull the SCVs, they're gonna soak enough hits for Trap to, or for Polt to get in close with the Marauders and pick off those Colossus, and there aren't enough force fields to prevent those SCVs or to prevent those Marauders from getting close enough to dealing a lot of damage. So we see Trap instead. He's just gonna take his third base, very safely, and I really like this play by him getting DTs. This is another countermeasure, or this is another measure that he used right after the attack that gets him ahead. Like, he might not necessarily have been planning to do that, but it only makes sense to throw down a Dark Templar Shrine right after the attack hits, or it's just a way to solidify your advantage by creating a more diversity of bigger variety of tech options available to the Protoss player. Oh, this observer is really nice. He might have made another one, or he might not have. I don't know. All right, so let's see when the DT shrine goes down. So this attack is about to be dealt with. These probes, almost none of them die, which is amazing. And now Trap is moving forward. That's his first action. His second action is to throw down a Dark Shrine. And not only is this good because the Terran player is kind of on the defensive, so using a Dark, and it's at an unorthodox timing as well, so you're less likely to save up scans and have turrets out for this kind of stuff. Not only does it do that, but when Trap is taking his third base, it also allows you to have a safer third base to take as well, because if you can just warp in DTs, and if the Terran doesn't have any scans, then he's going to be forced to retreat. Another thing to note here is that Trap places two gateways over here. Notice how he still doesn't have any pylons over here. It's simply because he knows that if his army is positioned very well, then he won't need pylons to stop any kind of early attacks. Of course, he would probably want to have spotters over here to fight against Polt's like crazy 4 medevac doom drop nexus sniping mofos armies, but that isn't gonna hit right now, especially with how the game is progressing. So these DTs doing a ton of damage. They catch Polt off guard. I believe he only had one scan available, and he has 0 turrets down. So these DTs were a very great option by Trap, really showing that he understands when DTs can be used effectively. And behind this, we see him getting his third base up. He is finishing some upgrades. He's getting his Colossus out. And now we see that Trap is kind of positioning himself into the more defensive play. So we see here, and I really like this gateway placement too, because it creates more small chokes that the Colossus can use to their advantage. So the Colossus over here, if a drop attacks over here, they can either go this way or they can go this way. And if they go this way, the Colossus can fire off shots as the army approaches here. Then the Colossus can back up to over here, and the army can try to snipe the Colossus, but going into that choke point again makes it extremely difficult to snipe off multiple ranged Colossus with range, with extended thermal lance, with range. And the gateway placement here, like, the last thing you want to be doing as a Terran player is focusing gateways down. Hell, you even want to get pylons before you want to get those worthless gateways. They're 1000 HP, pylons are only 400, and it's only 150 minerals as well. It just takes way too much time to focus it down, and it's just not worth the time invested of sending that doom drop over. So having the gateways as the first attack priority, like, the Terran players usually aren't going to want to go for this, and even if they do, it gives you enough time to bring your army in position to stop them from maybe sniping those buildings or some more important buildings, basically. So if we take a look here at Trap's vision, we see that he has eyes on the main army. His Warp Prism, I believe it was for Dark Templars. Sorry I missed that. But that's not really the important aspects of the game that I wanted to go over. The more important things are the building placement. Like, it's just a very nicely laid out building placement, and each building has, or almost each building, has a important important thought behind where it's being placed, I think. So we see here, Polt's trying to get something done, but his bio army is just really small. So even though he's able to pick off most of the Colossus, he's going to lose all of his Vikings, and he doesn't have a big enough bio force to deal with all of these units. Very good play by Trap pulling his probes. I think it was a good decision here, similar to when Trap was over here. Let me go back to it because this is a replay after all. But it's the similar concept that when Trap was over here, and if Trap chose to attack at this point and commit to an all-in instead of taking his third base, then he would have, then Polt could have pulled his SCVs and would have been able to stomp the army. The goal of pulling your SCVs or your probes is not because it's a desperation tactic. It's to pull them on purpose to provide a little bit more extra HP. In this case, it's 45 times 15. Even more. Let's just do 45 times 20 because it's easier to multiply. So that adds about an additional 900 HP worth of units. So it's like a good seven and a half Marauders that you of tankiness that you can add into your army by pulling the SCVs. So like this army just doesn't have enough DPS to deal that much damage. So Polt would have been able to completely crush the army here if he pulled his SCVs. So it's not a desperation tactic. It's just a very it's an intelligent choice to pull the SCVs. And in this case, it's an intelligent choice to pull the probes because this is Polt's entire army, and if Polt loses this, the DT is here. He sees that nothing is mining from the third base. Trap knows he's ahead in probes as well, so he knows all he has to do is kill this army, and this is Polt's ace card, or his. This is Polt's last draw. Like after this, he has nothing. If he loses his army without dealing enough damage, he's not going to be able to win the game. This is the only way that he can win the game, by taking a good fight, and Trap pulls his probes to prevent Polt from doing that. So we see 15 extra probes. That's about 800 HP. That Colossus comes out a really great time. Mothership Core! Oh, it doesn't have enough for time warp. But yeah, those probes being pulled out. He ends up losing a lot of them, but in return, instead of losing the probes, he doesn't lose valuable units such as the sentries, such as the zealots. The zealots are still important because they do provide a meat shield, and their shields do regenerate. And it also allows time for Trap to throw down some Dark Templars, because Polt has to constantly burn scans every time a Dark Templar is out. So every time Polt burns a scan, or every time the longer the fight goes on, the more in favor it is of Polt, because the more in favor it is for Trap, because he can continuously warp in DTs after the scans are gone. So yeah, he's able to completely pick off this army. Polt loses the entire army. He knows that he's done, and GG is called. So even though Trap lost all of his probes at the natural, or at the third, it didn't really matter because he had enough of an army and an economy on 2 bases, and Polt was barely on 2 bases because of those DTs, and because the DTs not only killed a bunch of workers, but they also forced Polt to save up scans and to use scan energy. So he didn't have any mules available to him as well to get an economic lead or to come back and to produce consistent amount of units. So GG is called, and there we go. Yeah, pretty cool game by Trap. I think the decisions that he did in this game, not necessarily his control or his macro was special, but his building placement and his decisions to get ahead after something happens, I really like. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't plan that Dark Shrine, but even if he did, or if he didn't, then that's really good play by him. If he did, then that's still really good play by him because it hits an unorthodox timing. So either way, that's very good timings. And the building placement really, I think, was a game ender for Polt, because if Polt was able to get behind the natural mineral line and snipe off a bunch of probes, then this would have been a completely different game. So that brings an end to this video about Protoss building placement and special things to consider when you're putting down your buildings. Don't just put them down randomly, but try to have a special place for them. If you guys have any other videos that you want me to do, comments, questions, concerns, criticism, whatever, comment and I will get to it ASAP. And also let me know what you think about me doing a video on different matchups. I know this isn't like a completely foreign matchup to me. It's not a PvZ, it's a PvT, so there is still some Terran involved. So hopefully this can be informative to both Protoss and Terran players because I'm trying to like provide a video from both sides rather than just the Terran side. Did I forget anything? Nope. Yeah, so yeah, I gotta find another video to do though. Since all the tournaments are over, it's kind of hard to find good games, and I haven't really been motivated to watch many games recently because all of the Koreans are just like AFK. I might go through some WCS EU VODs, and I know I was a little bit harsh on MMA, so I might try to be a little bit nicer to him and do a video highlighting his strengths next video. But yeah, all right. Peace out, guys. See you in the next video.